In this session, we want to start to get a sense of what it would look like to implement our UML in a real language like PowerShell. So I'm going to bring up my browser here, and remember our bank account object that has properties of owner, balance, and active with a method of withdrawal and deposit. So we're going to focus on those properties first. And I'm going to come over to the About section in PowerShell documentation and look at About Classes. And some of this should seem familiar. Describes how you can use classes to create your own custom types. Okay, so here's that idea of when we create a class, we're creating a new type. And we have those three basic built-in types of strings, numbers, and booleans. Okay. It was added in PowerShell 5. A class declaration is a blueprint used to create instances of objects at runtime. So there's a lot wrapped up in that. Okay, the class, we're declaring classes. We don't actually implement classes. We declare the class, which is a template or a blueprint for objects that will actually be instances, will actually be in memory. Okay, and the classes don't really take up memory at runtime. It's saying when the program runs, okay, when our instructions are being followed, use some memory to store the object. It says how much memory is being used and how it's organized. Let's see. When we define a class, we define its name and type, and I think they're going to give us some syntax down here, yes. So we'll get used to this syntax. Class is a keyword in the language. It's a terminal symbol. We're actually going to type that. Class name in angle brackets. This is that BNF idea of we're going to substitute an identifier in for here. I'm not going to dive into the BNF right now, but we'll give it some identifier for the class name. The square brackets mean optional. Okay, so all of this colon, base class, comma, interface list is all optional. The curly brace here is not meaning repetition. It's actually a terminal symbol. I know you have to get used to interpreting this, but it's actually a terminal symbol. So we're actually going to type that in following the keyword class and a name. Okay, and there's a matching closing curly brace for it down here. And so that means that all of this stuff is in between these curly braces following class and an identifier, a name. Okay? And there's some other optional stuff in here. I'll just point out for the moment that what we see is there are property definitions and method definitions. And then we can decorate them with these other hidden and static things, and we'll look at more stuff like that. But basically, again, the keyword class followed by an identifier name that we make up like bank account. And then instead of the three boxes that we have in UML, in text we're going to use curly braces to say, okay, here's the beginning and here's the end of this class. And in between there, we'll have the property definitions followed by the method definition. Actually, not followed by. The order doesn't matter in PowerShell. Okay. The other thing we're going to need to know is that variables in PowerShell start with a $sign. So if we came over here, we probably should take the time to come in here and look at, okay, what about variables? And the long and the short of it is that variables begin with a $sign. That's how PowerShell knows that this name is a variable and not the name of something else like a type or a keyword. Okay. Then we can use the PowerShell command new object to say that we're going to new up an object of some particular type, some particular class name. There is an alternate syntax, and that is instead of saying new object, we can use a type, class name or a new type, followed by new, and then parentheses. Okay. This is more of the .NET syntax. New-object is more PowerShell. In PowerShell, to be friendly, commands follow this notion of a verb dash noun, I guess I should say. Okay, so like new is the verb here, and then object is a noun, so we're saying create a new object. And again, in the .NET syntax, we use the colon operators here. There's a little note about it here as well. And then they're going to show us an example. And in the example, there's the keyword class. They're making a new class called device. So it's going to be a new type, new class called device. And it consists simply of one property. That's it. PowerShell is weakly typed. So if we don't tell it the type, it'll try to figure it out. And it's pretty good about it. But we can explicitly tell it the type, and what we see is that types are in square brackets. Now, I know that's going to be confusing. This is actual code where we're using the square brackets to indicate a type. Up here is documentation. And in documentation, the square brackets mean optional. I don't know what else to say. And so we can see here then there's a $sign. So we're saying here's a variable or a property of this class now called brand. And we see that we might remember in UML, we had the name colon the type. Okay. In PowerShell, like a lot of languages, that's flipped around and the type comes first. And then the name, the type is in square brackets. The name is preceded by a $sign. Okay, so all that to say then that there's the class definition. And we define that once, and then we can use it. We can create as many device objects as we want. They're down here saying $dev. Okay, so they're making up a new variable called dev and assigning it the type device new. So this is where it's newing up or instantiating a device object named dev. And so it's going to have this property called brand. So then we can use the member of operator, the dot, to say $dev, object dev, member brand, and assign it the literal string of characters such as this. Then what we see is in PowerShell, if we just shout out the name of an object, PowerShell is going to come back and tell us what it thinks about that object. Okay, let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to come over here to start and type in PowerShell and bring up PowerShell. Let's see how I do it this way. Over here. We don't need a lot of space, I guess. And so I'm just going to interactively type this in. So I'm going to say class bank account, opening curly brace. Now, the interpreter doesn't care about white space, so I can type this all on one line or not. If I hit enter, since I'm in an interactive mode right now, PowerShell comes back with the two angle brackets saying, hey, you didn't finish the thought. You didn't finish the statement. Okay, that's not a complete sentence. So it's giving me the opportunity to finish it. And I'm going to say, let's see, $owner is the property of my class. Again, I can enter, and I close the curly brace. And notice PowerShell picked up, oh, that closing curly brace closes the statement. It's the end of the statement. And so now I got a prompt back. But it's remembering that class bank account, because now I can say $account is a, I guess I'll do it either way, new dash object bank account. And what we notice is I got a prompt back. It didn't say anything. And the sort of rule of thumb is silence means complete agreement. So if there was an error, if the interpreter didn't understand something, it would have given me a message and said so. And we'll learn the fine art of interpreting error messages. But it seems like it worked, which means if I just shout out now, account, PowerShell comes back and says, oh, I know what an account is. It's an object of the class bank account that has a property called owner. And I can then say, okay, $account member owner, and I can assign that a name. Again, silence, seems like it worked. And so now if I say $account, it shows me, okay, account is an object that has one property owner and the value of it is Joe.